committee of the Post Commission to order for May 18th, 2023. We have several items on the agenda today. We'll begin with a court order and post surrender from the Tennessee Department of Safety, Stephen Barclay. Does legal have any information on that?
Yes, Mr. Barclay had voluntarily agreed to surrender his post certification, and we have an agreed order to that effect for the informal committee to consider.
Motion to approve.
Commissioner Wright, second.
We have a motion to approve and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, it's accepted. All right, moving on to matters of decertification. Begin with the Memphis Police Department. Tadarius Bean. Mr. Bean was terminated for violating excessive and unnecessary force and other policy violations. I believe his attorney is here, so perhaps to save time for the Memphis Police Department in presenting this, sir, if you would step to the podium. For the record, state your name, and you can go ahead and make your request to the board.
Certainly. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Timothy Taylor. I'm an attorney in Memphis. I'm here on behalf of Mr. Tadarius Bean. Mr. Bean could not appear here today, so I'm, as I said, here on his behalf. Of course, the Memphis Police Department, as required by regulations, has requested Mr. Bean's decertification due to the fact that he was terminated from his employment for misconduct, or that was, let me be clear about that, that's the police department's position. Obviously, there are other matters, as the Commission is probably aware, relating to the incident that resulted in Mr. Bean's termination. My office does not represent him in those matters, but he has another attorney, and those matters are proceeding in court in Shelby County. While those matters are proceeding, Mr. Bean is not really in a position to freely discuss this incident, and indeed, when he had the administrative hearing before the Memphis Police Department, he could not freely discuss that incident. He was only able to say no, sir, and a representative of the Memphis Police Association, which is also my client, issued a statement on his behalf. My request to the committee here today is to place Mr. Bean's decertification proceedings into suspended status. This is a process that actually arose, I was somewhat involved with the origination of some 15 years ago maybe, where basically his certification goes into an inactive status. He cannot be a law enforcement officer. He cannot work for a law enforcement agency. It simply remains an inactive status, and the decertification proceedings are pending the conclusion of the other legal proceedings related to this. If the other legal proceedings conclude positively, then it would be my job to try to obtain his reinstatement to the Memphis Police Department. If I'm successful there, then we could come back to the Post Commission, and the underlying grounds for the request for decertification would not exist. On the other hand, if the proceedings both in the courts or the proceedings that I would do following that regarding his employment, if neither one of those proceedings are successful for Mr. Bean, then the issue is a moot point, and he would not be able to, he would not be able to maintain his. Anyway, so for that reason, I'm asking on behalf of Mr. Bean that the committee recommended the commission to place his decertification proceedings into suspended status, which is a practice that has been done for quite a while. I'd be happy to answer any questions if anyone has any.
We have a motion and a second to place this into suspended status. Do we have any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion carries.
Thank you very
Placed
much.
in suspended status.
And once all the proceedings are concluded, we will obviously notify the Post Commission of the result so it can then take the appropriate action.
Certainly. Thank you very much, sir. All right, moving on to our next matter. The Memphis Police Department, Maurice H. Cox. Mr. Cox resigned with disciplinary action pending for violating excessive and unnecessary force and other compliance and regulations. Is Mr. Cox in the audience today? Is there anybody here representing Mr. Cox in the audience today?
Motion to decertify based off no show.
All right, a motion for decertification by default for resigning with disciplinary action pending.
Second.
Is that the motion?
That is the motion.
Okay. We have motion and a second. Any discussion?
Did he actually resign with this pending? Is that? I didn't see whether that was the record indicated.
I was just trying to see if we had a resignation in lieu of termination, or in lieu of decertification, or I didn't see that in the record when I went through it.
He did resign with this disciplinary action pending. And just to make sure the commission is aware, he was notified and did state that he was just not coming. All right, we have a motion and a second for the default order. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to the Smyrna Police Department's Tyler Emmets. On May 31st, 2022, Mr. Emmets resigned in lieu of termination. On May 27th, 2022, Mr. Emmets was arrested for aggravated domestic assault. Do we have a representative from the Smyrna Police Department here? Yes, sir. Would you step up to the podium, sir? Are you Mr. Emmets in the blue tie? Okay. Just go ahead and have a seat, and we'll take you second.
And sir, I'll go and say this is an informal. We're not going to get, we can give us the cliff notes and whatnot, but I know sometimes these things get drugged way out, and that's for a formal if we go to that. So
yes, sir.
We have all the information that's provided right here in front of us, so that it'll save you a lot of time.
Thank you. Basically a synopsis of what brought us here.
Yes, sir. I see that there is a judgment here of the charges are going to be retired after 8 months. Is that in the judgment?
Yes. And that would be effective August 2nd of this year.
That was on aggravated domestic.
Yes.
If you would, could you identify yourself?
My name is Sergeant Todd Bryant, Smyrna Police Department.
And sir, if you want to go ahead and give just a cliff note for the record, and then, but like I said, we have all the details, right?
Yes, sir. In May of 2022, there was a disturbance, domestic violence call that our agency responded to. A weapon discharge had occurred. There was an argument, boyfriend, girlfriend. She had called, concerned for his health and welfare. Responding officers did ultimately determine that a round had been fired, and she claimed that some suicide. Obviously, arrested. Here we are. I don't know how much more detail you want me to get into.
I'm Chairman Parton. I take it that he's been terminated from the department?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Do you have any questions for the police department?
Just for the record, has this been? Has the court seen this? Have they made a determination, a judgment on this? Is this in? Is this being deferred, or what's the status?
Retirement and his next appearance is August the 2nd, and should, unless he violates anything, I believe it's on retirement.
Is this pretrial diversion? I didn't see a judgment form in our record. I just saw the charges. But is this subject to pretrial or judicial diversion, or do you know exactly how that's being handled, or they're just not going to go forward with these charges?
Correct. They're just going to retire the charge.
So it's just pending until some point, and then it's going to be withdrawn?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, pardon again, has that changed the city of administration's, city of Smyrna's outlook on moving forward with the decertification?
I have not been given any guidance on that. I was instructed after this incident to move forward with the decertification. We have since got a new police chief. The police chief that ordered me to begin this decertification process is no longer there. So I can't speak.
Thank you.
Any more questions for the representative of the Smyrna Police Department? All right, sir, you can go ahead and have a seat.
Thank you all.
Mr. Emmons. But, sir, for the record, just state your name and go ahead and give your side of the events that happened.
Tyler Zachary Emmons. I don't recall much of that night. I was heavily intoxicated. Acts. That it's been a long year post that traumatic event. It was a mental health crisis, suicidal situation that obviously covering. Mentally better, and obviously I'm here to represent myself.
Mr. Chairman, pardon, why do you want to keep your post certification?
This is something that I've always wanted to do since I was a kid, and that hasn't changed from this event. I understand that it's.
Are you planning on applying for law enforcement again?
I do. Environment. It's. I can't.
And you talk to us about having mental health issues and alcoholism issues. What are you doing about that?
I entered a rehabilitation center quickly after I got out of jail. I've been get away from alcohol. Finding myself next to pressure. Myself.
Just if I may, just based on the circumstances that are at play here, with the fact that the charge is not yet retired, but he's going to have an opportunity to essentially have this charge retired, I guess it would technically, to some degree, be under the I don't know the proper legal terminology here is, but maybe under the jurisdiction of the court or being monitored by the court. And so I'm not sure that now may be the most appropriate time for this matter to be decided, because would we as a commission allow somebody to serve if they were on probation or if they were under the jurisdiction of a court? And the answer to that would be no.
So in this case, it's like General Cherry brought up. We've just got a judgment from General Sessions Court of Rutherford County of agreed retirement. I don't see anywhere in here where there has been applied for expungement or plead under pretrial diversion, which would give him expungements, which he could go back and, I guess, appeal to the courts for an expungement. But his fingerprints and his charge record in Rutherford County. So if he was to go to work at another agency or apply with another agency when his background is being done, that is going to pop in his background. The only way that he's going to be able to get that changed is to go through the expungement process in said county. I agree on twofold here, but he's not. It looks like the system is giving him a break of not giving him a full conviction of a felony, and they're going to, if he completes these programs, it sounds like he's going to be able to have this charge retired. It's retired, and that's sometimes different than dismissal, and sometimes retrial diversion and then being able to apply for an expungement. So
It might just be better for the commission, this informal committee, to consider placing this in a suspended status until such time as the criminal aspect of this has been fully dealt with.
and that was going to be my motion.
I will second. Commissioner Wright.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. All in favor of placing this matter in a suspended status, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. So basically what we're going to do is we are placing this in a suspended status until you're no longer dealing with the court. And then would encourage you to bring this back up. The commission will let us know when it's over,
I agree.
and then we can proceed from there.
What's your court date in August?
August 2nd.
I would say my advice to him, he's within a 3-year period, I would say
Commissioner Wright, if I can, kind of my thoughts behind it is it being in suspended status, we just kind of left it there until if he goes through all those processes with the court and then actually a department wants to pick him up, then let them come before us and handle it at that time.
that would flow with that. I would not press the entire board, because looking at the history of how we've done, August would be. Give it some time, sir.
Okay, moving on to our next matter. It'll be the Memphis Police Department and Jonathan A. Hightower. Mr. Hightower resigned from the Memphis Police Department with disciplinary action pending, which could have resulted in termination. Is Mr. Hightower here?
Decertify, motion to decertify by default.
And just so the commission knows, and it's on the record, Mr. Hightower was served. He was notified. He did say that he has reapplied to the Memphis PD as well. But we have a motion for default. Okay, we have a motion for a default order. Since the officer resigned with disciplinary action pending. And do we have a second for that? Second. Okay, we have a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll take the vote. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Sumner County Sheriff's Office, Dustin R. Hood. Mr. Hood resigned from the Sumner County Sheriff's Office with disciplinary action pending, which could have resulted in termination. Do we have Mr. Hood here?
Motion on default.
Okay, and he was served. All right, we have a motion for default, and we have a second. Do we have any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, Motion carries. Johnson City Police Department, Andrew J. Lewis. On November 14th, 2022, Mr. Lewis was terminated for violations of department general orders. Is Mr. Lewis in attendance today? Mr. Lewis is here today. Okay. Do we have representatives from the Johnson City Police Department here? Sir, if you would go ahead and make your way to the podium. If you would identify yourself for the record and go ahead and state your side.
Thank you. I'm Sergeant Andy Clevenger. I'm in charge of the training unit with the Johnson City Police Department. I'm here on behalf of the City of Johnson City and also the Johnson City Police Department and the Interim Chief, Billy Church. Just a brief overview of this. This started on November 14th. Mr. Lewis was terminated from the Johnson City Police Department for a violation of Code of Conduct General Order, is how it's stated in the disciplinary action. Since his termination, he was picked up by a sister agency in the same county that the Johnson City Police Department is in, and he was employed by the sheriff there. Since his termination also, we have had a change in command staff. We have had a change in a new chief. And since that change has taken place, it's my place to say that the City of Johnson City and Interim Chief Church does not want to pursue decertification in this matter for Mr. Lewis.
Chairman Parton, I'm looking through here, was there, from what I'm reading, was there any criminal investigation or anything by the State Comptroller's Office involved in this?
Not that I know of. I wasn't a part of the investigation. I did file the decertification paperwork, but as far as any criminal charges or any criminal matter being investigated, I'm not aware of one. No, sir.
Because it's the city's position this was just a saying now that they didn't feel like there was malice in this, that it was trying to do something to help the department with the dog.
That I can't say. The only thing that I can say is, according to our city manager and the new chief, is they do not wish to pursue the charges, I'm sorry, not the charge, but the decertification based off of his new employment with the county agency. And he's been terminated from the Johnson City Police Department, and basically I just think they're done with the whole matter. So, and the interim chief was made in, if I remember correctly, March of this year. So
he's a deputy at Sullivan County now?
Yes, sir. No, I'm sorry, it'd be Washington County.
At Washington County?
Yes, sir.
Is he a canine handler at Washington County?
Not that I know of, sir, no.
I don't have any.
Any other questions for representative of the Johnson City Police Department?
I just got a couple of questions.
Right. Okay, there we go. Just, when I read through this, what we had in our materials, I was trying to figure out exactly where the misconduct was here, and I don't know if you know all the details on this, but let me just run through this quickly, make sure if I've got kind of the right view of this, because it looks like he had a dog he was working with, training to be a working dog. He got permission from the department to take this dog to the folks that deal with dogs and then sell them. He took the dog down there with permission of the department, and he had an arrangement where they were going to buy the dog, but then they sell it back to the department, and then he was going to be basically receive the proceeds as it goes through that process. And apparently there was some part of that process that the department was aware of, but some part of that process that they were not quite aware of. Is that kind of where we ran into the problems here?
That's my understanding as well. And again, I wasn't a part of the investigation. Like I said, my part was to go into ACADIS and file the decertification, and that's why I'm here today. So as far as that, as part of that investigation goes, I really can't say, but I'm like you, based on the internal investigation, that's what I read into as well. Anything else, I really don't know.
Okay.
I wish I could tell you. I don't have any other information on it.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Wright, make a motion for no action.
Second.
Third.
We have a motion and a second, and that the motion is for no action on this matter. And so, any further discussion?
I would just say the agency he's working for, their chief deputy, is probably the utmost canine authority in the whole state of Tennessee, and I'm sure he was probably involved in this hiring process and knew about this, so I feel confident that things will be.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll take the vote. The motion is for no action. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, be no action taken.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Moving on to our next matter, it's the issue of Cody M. Mullins of the Elizabethton Police Department. January 4th, 2023, Mr. Mullins resigned in lieu of termination after it was found that he violated departmental policy. The post-commission investigative staff did make contact with him. He did not want to come. Is Mr. Mullins here today? Cody Mullins, are you in the audience? Are you out in the hall? I don't believe he's here.
Motion to default.
So we have a motion and a second for default, decertification. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll take the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Sorry, Chief. Drove quite a ways for about 30 seconds, so have a safe drive home. All right, moving on to the Memphis Police Department and Freddie O. Romero. Mr. Romero resigned with disciplinary action pending for violation of department policy, and I believe... Okay, he had, we were notified he had a family emergency and was requesting that this matter perhaps be reset to a later date, so we'll need some action from the board on that. But he was in communication with the commission, and Assistant Director Bello, from what I understand, sir, he does want to have his hearing, but just is unable to make it to this hearing today, and has been in communication with us.
I'll make a motion to decertify by default, and if he wants the hearing, he can appeal it to for the full committee.
Mr. Bello, we were able to make contact with him, correct? Just to make sure, because I've got the letter, I guess, of service here unserved.
He was notified. He spoke
Okay.
to the investigator. He was notified by phone.
Okay, notified by phone. Just wanted to make sure on that. All right, motion is to decertify by default since he resigned with disciplinary action pending for violations of departmental policy. And again, for the commission, he'll have 30 days if this motion carries to request a formal hearing in front of the entire commission. Although, is there any discussion?
I don't think we got a second.
Did we get a second? Nah, ahead of myself.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I hate to disagree with anything that Sheriff Barton says because I like him so much and he's so smart and beautiful, but I don't have any reason not to give this gentleman a chance to show up here. I recognize that we could just go forward with the default and handle it at a formal, but I kind of hesitate.
I
to
agree
do
with
that.
I agree with General Cherry, but it seems like here of past we've had a couple that have lagged, and gentlemen may very well have some kind of family problem going on, and I'd be understanding of that. But we've probably, I would say, at least half of these that we have made motions on, we'll probably appeal it for formal hearings, and if he appeals to a formal hearing, then that means he's really interested in stating his case, and if he's not, then he's good with what he's got, and Memphis PD can go on about their life and close his case file. That's the reason I did what I did.
Commissioner Wright, I have a question. This if we know, looks like this has been going on since July of 2021. Do we know what his status has been, if he's where he's employed or anything from that time?
Yes, I believe he's currently an investigator with the Shelby County District Attorney's Office.
And if I was the Shelby County District Attorney General and I had a DA investigator, I would probably had a representative here jumping up and down saying, please, oh, please, oh, please. Anybody here from the DA's office in Shelby County today? I see nobody, so they must not be too interested in their employee.
Unaware.
We have a motion and a second for decertification, a default order of decertification. Any further discussion? All right, those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? No. All right, the motion fails.
I guess we can make a new motion now then, right?
You may.
You're up.
And this may have the same result as the last motion. But I'll make a motion that we defer this to the next disciplinary hearing.
Or we have a motion to defer this to the next, when you say disciplinary hearing, informal?
Informal hearing, yes.
Informal hearing.
The one thing I do, if we're open for discussion, Commissioner Wright.
We need a second.
Hang on. I'll second General Cherry's motion to help him.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Go ahead, Commissioner Wright.
For discussion, it may be unfair to the Memphis Police Department that did travel all the way up here today if they only have one for the next months to come back for what may or may not be. Just throwing that out there. Is it?
Would the informal committee want to hear from the Memphis Police Department on what exactly occurred and give them an opportunity, since they're here, to state what happened?
I wouldn't, because we're probably going to have a hearing on it, and I don't want these people happens up here so much to get all these details in here. But I will go on to say this: with him being employed at the District Attorney General's office, he does not have to be post certified. I'm ready to call the question, take a vote.
Okay, so we've got a motion to defer this to the next informal hearing date. It has been seconded, and so we will take the vote. All those in favor of deferring this to the next informal hearing date, say aye.
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 All right, we have 3 ayes. Any opposed? No. We have 3 for and 1 against. The motion to defer carries. So, apologize to the Memphis Police Department, but it'll be next hearing date. Moving on, we have the matter of the Memphis Police Department and Keith R. Snyder. Mr. Snyder resigned from the Memphis Police Department, and after his resignation, the Memphis Police Department requested his decertification for violations of departmental policy. Mr. Snyder is here today, correct? So, all right. And we have representatives from the Memphis Police Department, and we also have representatives from the Cookeville Police Department, where Mr. Snyder is currently employed. So, if we could have a representative from the Memphis Police Department step up and give the department's side of this. Mr. Bello, do you want to give some background on just sort of the timing and what your investigators have in our team have kind of put together as far as the timing on this matter, and Memphis PD seeking this decertification at such a late date after everything happened?
It appears. It looks like we received that notification at the end of July of last year. All the documents were signed from the previous year. I'm not sure what the delay was in the hang up in getting that submitted to POST and requesting that decertification. I will point out that there is nothing in the POST rules that says there's a time limit on submitting that, so there's that to consider as well.
Okay, thank you very much. We would go and have the Memphis Police Department step up to the podium and to present their side of this. And if you would, just for the record, state your name.
Monique Williams, Lieutenant with Memphis Police Department. Internal Affairs.
All right, go ahead, Lieutenant.
It was on September 13, 2020, that we received a complaint from a victim's family stating that their relative had expired at a local hospital, and they had learned information that that victim was in police custody on that date of September 13th and was transported to the hospital after she was unresponsive while in police custody. Internal Affairs learned of this complaint from the family, found the date following her death, and we initiated an internal investigation to determine the actions of the officers on the scene. Officer Snyder, Keith Snyder, who was on probation, his hire date of February 15, 2020, was part of that scene and participated in the encounter with the 35-year-old female victim. It was found that she was in crisis, and he assisted in taking her into custody. While in custody, she did become unconscious, and CPR had to be administered. However, there was a delay, is what the investigation determined. There was a delay in her medical aid on the scene. She had to be transported critical to the local hospital, and the length of this investigation from September 13th of 2020 wrapped up probably about 7 to 8 months later, because there were multiple officers involved that also faced various policy violations. Snyder was served, or was not unable to be served with the hearing once the investigation determined that he was in the violation of compliance with regulations to with weapons and neglect of duty. He submitted a resignation that in our internal investigation served administrative summons to adhere to those charges.
Do I have any questions for the representative of the Memphis Police Department?
Commissioner Wright, I have a few. Lieutenant, he was the arresting officer or part of a group of arresting officers?
Part of a group of arresting officers that responded to the location.
Was she placed in the back of his patrol car or someone else's patrol car?
The particulars, no, I do not believe. Well, he was on probation, so I don't have the correct answer on that. But the victim was placed in handcuffs and then detained in the back seat of a squad car. All the officers, including Snyder, were present when she exhibited signs that she was in distress. Immediately following her position in the squad car, she laid down and became unresponsive. Snyder's role in CPR, he did administer CPR as some of the other officers did. However, it was some time before they were realizing that she was in distress and pulled her out of the squad car, placed her on the ground while she was still handcuffed in the back, and started to do the CPR. They did rotations to administer CPR, and Snyder did do so. But it was a length of time that had lapsed before medical attention was provided.
Commissioner Partner, how many other officers have been fired or terminated over this incident?
Over this, most of the officers had different violations. None were terminated. As the earlier name mentioned, Lieutenant Romero, he was the supervisor over that scene that faced multiple policy violations for his supervisory role. He was not terminated. He resigned.
I'm sorry.
Yes, sir. He resigned.
And because he's only been an officer for
He was on the probation. He had an opportunity to provide his Garrity statement for this internal investigation. The investigation continued on for some months, but the timeline on that is that we opened the case in September 13, 2020. I believe he resigned on October 10th of 2020, so that's just about a month later.
And when was this decertification sent to us?
We received it on July 29th of 2022.
How come such a delay on that? I'm just asking. Don't know.
I do not.
Sure, you've not had much going. But we'll ask him. Thank you. That's all the questions I have. I'm sorry, Commissioners, you got other questions.
Commissioner Isbell, how much time elapsed before she received some care from this officer?
It was 8 to 10 minutes.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I think in the paperwork I looked at, there was mention of a 4-minute time span. Is that not correct?
That's the amount of time that Snyder administered CPR.
So for a span of 8 minutes, there were several officers around and nobody jumped in to try to help her. Is that kind of what we're looking at here? Okay. And was Snyder, I mean, he was a probationary employee, right? I mean, when you say he was on probation, it's because he was new and...
Our date was in February. The
Okay.
incident occurred in September.
So I'm guessing he was not the senior person on the scene.
He was not the senior officer, and he was not the crisis intervention
And he wasn't
officer.
the arresting officer either, was he? Or was he?
That I don't remember.
I'm
I don't
just-
recall on the notes that I had.
I'm just trying to figure out why he's the one that's under the gun here. Is this something that, I mean, if one of the bases for decertification is that he resigned in lieu of termination, would he have been terminated for this, or is this something that is still kind of not determined how he would have been dealt with? I don't know if that's something you can answer.
I don't have the answer to that. Again, there were multiple officers that responded to that scene that were also charged with other violations, and they were not terminated.
And I don't mean for this to come across the way it's going to come across. Is there anybody here that would have those answers from from your department?
Regarding the decertification
That's here,
process?
correct. Well, just have the questions that, there seem to be a lot of unanswered questions. And I understand you probably did not conduct this investigation. We're talking about something that occurred, a couple of years ago. Is there anybody here that can answer the questions that the commissioners have asked that you do not have the answers to?
Well, part of the first question on the decertification lapse, I do not have that answer. The commander with the training academy is here for that response, if she has it.
Okay. And one other clarification: when we're talking about probationary officer, was he in field training at the time? Was he under the supervision of a field training officer, or was there a senior officer that was responsible for evaluating him in the traditional sense of field? So was he? I see a nod. Was he in FTO at the time? Okay,
7 months after, yes, he was still in.
So he was in field training under the observation and direction of a field training officer, an experienced officer, whose responsibility it is to train the probationary officer that's under him or her. Okay.
So it's Commissioner Parton again. So what Director Kane's getting to is the City of Memphis Police Department has issued a decertification for a young man that had only been a police officer for how long? A short time. And was in the custody of an FTO of an event where somebody unfortunately died. I guess our question is if he resigned and under his probation period, why, can you answer why y'all put in for a decertification on him?
Afternoon. I'm Colonel Sharon Cunningham from the Training Academy. So, with the level of the administrative proceeding that this occurred at the precinct level, it could have been held at the precinct level, but this particular investigation was held at the deputy chief's level, which would lend to more particular days if there is a violation, detected after the hearing and going through all of the information. Because at the precinct level, the colonels there can give up to 20 days. So it would be of a more serious charge. And in relation to the fact that this was an in-custody death, that was one of the factors that weighed very heavily with this particular investigation.
Yes, ma'am. So can you answer this? What charges, internal or disciplinary action, or what was done to this gentleman's FTO?
I'm not sure actually who the FTO was at the time, who his FTO was. I do not have that information.
Okay. I have no further questions. I would like to be ready to hear from this officer.
Any other questions for representatives of the Memphis Police Department at this time from the commissioners?
I'll just ask one last question.
Yes, sir.
Colonel, I don't know if you can answer this or not, but if he had not resigned, do you think he would have been terminated?
That decision, I would not be able to say what the deputy chief would have done in that hearing, because this still was a fact-finding investigation, so it would have solely been the discretion of the deputy chief that was hearing the investigation and going through the hearing summary with the officer.
And I still wonder why this gentleman resigned. There was no criminal charges. Doesn't look like nothing in here that says there was any criminal investigation of any wrongdoing or something, but yet we had a pretty big delay on applying for a decertification. But anyway, thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you all.
All right, we'll move on to Mr. Snyder. Sir, if you would step up to the podium and give your side. And I understand there are representatives of the Cokeville Police Department, and we'll give you all an opportunity to speak as well after we hear from Mr. Snyder. Sir, if you would just state your name for the record and your current job and rank.
My name is Keith Snyder with the Cokeville Police Department. I'm a patrol canine handler. I received the notification that this was happening approximately May 9th, about a week and a half ago. Came as quite a surprise. I had remembered this incident pretty well, as doing CPR on somebody was kind of a new thing, especially so early in training. Not being able to review any body camera, my memory is limited to a memorandum that I had saved, that I had typed out for the supervising lieutenant a day or two after the incident, as well as what I can remember three years later. From my recollection of that incident, at no point in time did we observe Miss Claiborne in an unresponsive and incoherent state where we neglected to take any action. From that incident, after fighting to get her into handcuffs, to get her out to the patrol vehicle, we had gotten her into the patrol vehicle. She was yelling and screaming. I had to go to the opposite side of the patrol vehicle from where we were putting her in order to actually get her into the car because she was still fighting us. When we did finally get her into the vehicle, we observed that she started to lay down. She started exhibiting signs that appeared to be seizing. So I ensured that she was in a recovery position in the back seat. We recognized there was a need for continued intervention. I went around to the opposite side of the patrol car where her head was located, where Officer Fleetus and I believe Officer Sharman was there as well. I'm not sure where my FTO was. It was Officer Simpson. I think I was in day 23 of FTO. I think I had either just gotten into phase 2 or was close to the end of phase 2. I observed that she was her respirations were starting to slow down. So I can't remember. I believe I asked where the Narcan was because I didn't know where the Narcan was in the patrol car to attempt that intervention. When that didn't work, I tried to feel a carotid pulse. I couldn't find one, so I made the decision to attempt CPR outside of the vehicle and try and get ambulance resources en route. From what I remember, there just wasn't a time when I was looking at her and not paying attention to her or seeing her in some sort of distress and not trying to help her. As far as resigning pending any disciplinary action, I had applied and was going through the background process with my current employer, Cookeville PD, for quite some time before that incident. While I was in Memphis, I had met a girl who is now my wife. Her family is from the Cookeville area. We had decided that we wanted to relocate there, and so that was the sole reason for me leaving Memphis. I have nothing but respect for the Memphis Police Department. I have a lot of friends from the academy and a lot of great officers that I still talk to on a weekly basis. I feel for what their city's been going through, but as far as this decertification process, I'm at a loss. I'm not really sure what I'm doing here, to be honest.
This is Commissioner Parton. So when this happened, I'm sure lots of people came and investigated, investigators and things of that nature. Were you ever, was there any insinuation of a criminal investigation or any wrongdoing on the officer's parts other than just, policies and procedures of handling in custody people? It sounds like she might have had some kind of intoxicant or narcotic overdose death or something. But I don't see any autopsy reports. I don't see any results of anything of what the death was related to, or if it was related to the hands of law enforcement. Do you have any knowledge of that, or why?
Sir, I do not. I do remember that directly after this incident, the on-scene lieutenant was advised, and he made the scene with us. I do remember him telling me how good that we had done and how what I did saved her life. He notified me that the Memphis Fire lieutenant had told him that they had gotten a pulse back and that they were on the way to the hospital. The next day, I believe he told me that she was still alive, and my DOR from that shift from my FTO, those were about the only 2 7s that I got during my field training. So I had no insinuation that I had done anything wrong or that there was anything that was going to be investigated. I think it was I'm not sure if it was the next shift or the shift after. I was asked by my lieutenant to write a memorandum about what I did on the incident. It wasn't really explained why, but my lieutenant said to do something, so I did it. But other than that, I hadn't heard of any investigations or internal affairs things happening.
Have you talked to, since you've been served with this informal notice, have you talked to your FTO or anybody else that was on the scene of any action that was taken to them?
Yes, sir. I was not able to make any contact with my FTO. He was a fill-in FTO. I'd only had him, I believe, 1 or 2 shifts as my regular FTO was out. I did talk to Officer Sharman, who was on the scene with me. He had said that he had gone through a disciplinary process and had actually, he showed me the copy of his statement of charges in his case. He had the same 2 policy violations that I had, in addition to an additional charge for, I believe it was a body cam violation. The 2 charges that I'm being brought up on in this scenario for him had been dismissed.
So you resigned. How soon after that did you go to work up at Cookeville PD?
I started at Cookeville October 11th of 2020.
Did you have to go back to the state academy?
No, sir.
So you were certified from Memphis PD
Sure.
once you were hired at Cookeville? Okay. I don't have any further questions.
Commissioner Wright, Mr. Snyder, was the lieutenant that made the scene, was that Lieutenant Romero at the
Yes,
time?
sir, it was.
Make a motion for no action.
Second.
We have a motion for no action. We have a second. Any discussion on that? Hearing none, we'll take the vote. The motion motion is for no action with a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, Commission will take no action.
Mr. Chair, if don't mind, might want to back up to the Romero case above that. We may be able to handle that without. Is it back open for discussion?
Well, we had made a motion to defer that to the next meeting. However, I would defer to legal. I think we can go back to that. It's an informal hearing.
Right. You want to go back and revisit?
So we can go back to revisit, and I think we would have to, if we decided, if the informal committee decided to, you obviously want to revisit it. If you decided that that's not the direction you wanted to go, I think we would need to have a motion to that effect, obviously. But go ahead, sir.
In discussion of that, I think we pretty well kind of covered his case as well, and could probably save Memphis PD and him as well some time if we wanted to revisit that. If we do, I'll make a motion that we.
You want to make a motion to undo
open up the Romero.
I think we can just go back to it and talk about it. I mean, it's an informal hearing, so let's just throw it out there on the table and talk it through. And then at the end of that, the motion that was passed was to defer it to the next informal committee hearing. So if you wanted to make a decision on that today, then I think you would need a motion to rescind a motion to undo the previous, just a motion, I guess it would be a motion for no action. We'll go to legal on that, but.
Well, I think there may be I'm gonna say leave it as is for now, because it's still, we've not done nothing but pass it. But I would like to hear Mr. Romero's story if he's interested. Like I said, he may not care, but
my issues with
what you're saying.
My issues with it is the department could not tell us if he would have been terminated for those violations anyway.
Well, my suggestion would be to Memphis PD that they bring all the folks they need to bring. I mean, if they're submitting the decertification, then they need to say, but they may not be the correct representatives that we're looking into back after. And I will reiterate, if he's a DA investigator now in the city in which he was separated from a department and now a certification's up here as a district attorney general, I'm sure that I would be interested in that. So that, again, they need to bring some folks from the DA's office with them.
Well, and it's not with regard to the and with all due respect to the Memphis Police Department, I mean, we've already dealt this year with 2 people from a previous salary supplement where the books have been closed on that one and had to pay, I think it was, 2 officers a salary supplement from, a couple of years ago. So, I mean, they're just, we need things to be more organized. If you're going to seek a decertification on somebody, that needs to be something, and this would go for any agency, needs to be done sooner rather than later, because people wind up going other places and being employed. And in this particular case, for this officer, they found out about it not from the Memphis Police Department, as most agencies kind of have an idea of where this is going to go, or most officers, when they leave their agency, he found out about it through us. Was obviously quite surprised about it. And when an agency shows up to one of these informal hearings, they need to be prepared to present the case and be able to answer the questions about the reason why they're requesting decertification. I'm sorry to be on a soapbox here, but we're talking about people's livelihood. We're talking about something that could, in this case, dramatically impact somebody's ability to earn a living. In law enforcement, for most people to get into it, hopefully everybody, I know for me, it was a calling. And you're talking about stripping that away from somebody. And I think we owe it to the people that are called here to be decertified to bring a case against that person, and not for us to leave here with perhaps more questions than we came into the day with. There's cameras here and there's people here to report on this, and a lot of focus right now on law enforcement. And I would just encourage every department to come prepared to these proceedings, because it certainly doesn't look good if you're not prepared when you show up for a regulatory meeting.
Commissioner Wright, Director, can you tell us again when Lieutenant Romero was served? I suspect it was the same short time frame for him as well.
The commission made contact with him on March 13th, 2023. So he was given a little bit more than 2 months lead time.
Commissioner Wright, I guess I'll kind of see where it goes. I'll make a motion that we undo it and for no action on Lieutenant Romero's case.
All right, we have a motion to undo that deferment to the next informal committee. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Would we like to discuss this?
As I understand, but that was a kind of a dual motion. There was also a motion to take no action. Is that?
No action.
Correct?
That's
okay.
correct.
And I'll second that part of the motion as well.
And I take it that Romero was related to this last case. Is that
Supervisor of
that same?
Commissioner Isbell, for discussion purposes, the magnitude of this case, the potential, I'm really uneasy, me personally, not hearing from this officer. Well, at first, I was not for deferring it on, but in hearing the previous case and testimony and the circumstances around this case, before we take act, I really personally would like to hear from that officer or the Lieutenant Romero and the people who actually investigated this to give us some factual information about it. That's just me. That's where I am on this one.
And it is a in custody death. There again, if it's coming from my department and there's somebody that I need decertified, and the basis of this an in custody death, you're going to have a deep autopsy report, phone numbers, everything that this is over in custody.
And they couldn't answer the questions that were asked.
And like I said, these are command staff. I understand it. They're just grabbing files. decertified over an in-custody death. I think and then I hear that this former Officer Romero is now a DA investigator in the same county. I agree with both of you very well. Custody death, or could be. Still gonna get that same opportunity of the informal to come and.
This Commissioner Wright, I guess my thoughts behind it are kind of thinking he was probably caught off guard like Officer Snyder was of not anything happening, and then all of a sudden just popped up on him. And I don't know if Officer Snyder would be willing to answer a few questions about it, but I would about the Romero case. But I've got a few for him if he'd be willing to answer them.
If I could just jump in, this when I looked through the paperwork we have on Lieutenant Romero, the allegations were that he failed to file an arrest for emergency commitment form and a death offense report, and didn't contact the Homicide Bureau and ISB. And not that there was anything that he did at the scene that would have led to the death of this person or any kind of neglect related to that. And so that's the thing that disturbs me, is we're talking about paperwork violations as opposed to something that, you know.
General Terry, you're correct on that. And that's kind of my thoughts of why I was wanting to ask Officer Snyder. I believe by his earlier testimony, I don't even think Lieutenant Romero was on the scene until after the fact of all of this.
And that's my point, is if he comes here and the questions we ask are on the record forever,
I guess we'll just move with a motion and see where she goes.
She'll be on the record.
We're going to be back where we were.
Well, and I think too, when you look at this, and you know, for our active law enforcement officials that are on this commission, think about your FTO program. And I know that, having served as a field training officer myself, that you kind of take on this idea that you're responsible for what your trainee does. Where's the FTO? Where's the FTO in this? I mean, that's why we have a field training program, so that somebody can be paired with an experienced officer. And where is that person? You have the supervisor, and you have the trainee, but you don't have. I mean, why decertify those two?
Director, this is Commissioner Wright again. You kind of, to my point, I mean, it's like there was a lot of other people that was involved that's not looking at any action. So I don't have any more.
I mean, we can ask Memphis to come back up and state if any of these other parties are going to have any action. I mean, would that be something that the informal committee would want to hear? I'd like the answer to that question. Would somebody from the Memphis Police Department that can answer our question step up to the podium and let us know if there's going to be any further decertifications that come out of this, or are these the only two requests out of this incident?
No, sir, this case is closed and all the administrative hearings have been held.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Lieutenant. So the motion that has been seconded is to undo the previous motion that passed, which was to defer, and to take no action on Freddie Romero. Is that inaccurate? Okay. Any further discussion? All right, those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? We have none opposed. The ayes have it. All right, moving on to our final matter of the day, the Clarksville Police Department, Vaughn S. Webster. On April 27, 2022, Mr. Webster was terminated for marijuana usage. And Mr. Bello, can you kind of give us an update? I think we were not expecting him to show up. Is Mr. Webster here? Was he, what was our contact with him, Assistant Director Bello? I see that we've had some communication, but what is the, what communication have we had with him?
Mr. Webster was notified of the hearing. I believe he spoke with investigators and indicated that he would not be appearing. He did send Investigator Krieb a letter of explanation. I would be happy to read that to the board if that's their wish.
Make a motion to default.
We have a motion for default, order of decertification, and a second. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. Motion carries. That will bring us to the end of our agenda today for the informal hearing of the Peace Officer Standards and Training Commission. This meeting is adjourned.